listen to those records and you can tell right away, you know, what, you might not see the color, but you can understand, you know, that guitar's got a certain sound and a certain tone. So when you're approaching the drum kit, depending, people will say warmth, and I think what they mean is, instead of, you know, for example, like this drum, let's pull the drum key off. Now of course it's different size, but you know, this one's pitched up a little bit, it's smaller, so it's going to be brighter, and this one, it's a little warmer, it's got a lot more depth and tone. So people will use all kinds of terms to describe it. I did a session once and the producer told me I want the drums to sound red, and it was a blue kit. We eventually found red, but you know, people will use all kinds of words, you know, and I won't name any movies, but you've probably seen a lot of comedies where they do the same thing with certain things, and it just depends. But you know, bright, airy, open, dark, you know, depth. A lot of people will say, I want a real woody snare, you know. And working, you will learn through situations and stuff, you know, what a lot of those tones mean. And again, my best example, again pointing to guitar players, if you have a Les Paul, it's never ever going to sound like a Strat, and vice versa. And a Tele will always sound like a Tele. Now you can do certain things, change cabinets, change pickups, change pedals, but that guitar was made to have certain characteristics. Just like a cymbal, it's going to do a certain thing, you know. And again, like I was speaking of a wooden snare, or let's say if you're playing like a jazz type of music, you might want a 20 or an 18-inch kick. It's real bright, though you can get a lot of low end out of it, and it's real fat. Well, if you're a big rock drummer and you want that big kind of rock sound, then you're going to want a 24, or like a John Bonham who eventually moved up to 26. You know, and in between, you're never going to make an 18-inch kick drum really sound like a 26. You can fool with the miking, you can fool with the frequencies, you can fool with the outboard gear and put effects or whatever on it, especially with today's digital technology, but the drum is going to do what it does. And there's limitations with that. With each instrument, there's going to be limitations. And again, learn what those are, and learn what the characteristics that the manufacturer put into each instrument is going to be, rather than go in and say, you know, I want this amp or this cymbal or this guitar because this guy plays it. You know, that guy is who he is. And my best example of that is, I'll give you two guitar stories. And I'll refer to guitar stories because they're, to me, kind of easier for everybody to understand rather than me talking about a drummer. Two guitar players, everybody knows pretty much, Billy Gibbons and Jeff Beck. They're both known for their incredible playing, but mostly for their tone. Everybody hears their records and goes, man, what tone, even if you're not a guitar player. And I've seen this in person with both these players. These guitar players can go in and they will pick up any instrument, and they will pick it up and it will immediately, without adjusting anything on the amp or the guitar, sound like them. I saw Billy Gibbons do this at a store in Canada. We went in, we were looking at amps, this was on a tour some years back, and this store happened to have some vintage Vox amp. I couldn't tell you what the model was, but it was like a late 60s, early 70s model, and the amp and the head kind of fit in this metal TV tray roll-around rack. It was beautiful, great condition, sounded great, worked great, and he was interested in getting it. And all the guys in the store were like, oh my God, you know, here's Billy Gibbons in our store. And then he wanted a guitar. So they're all kind of running around, wondering, worrying what, you know, let's get the best Les Paul, or, you know, whatever. Billy reached around, pulled a brown BC Rich off the rack, plugged it in, started playing. Just like that, it was Billy Gibbons. It sounded just like every ZZ Top record there was. He might have touched the knobs a minute or two later for all of 3 to 5 seconds. That was it. It's all in the player's hands. If you take a drummer like Neil Peart and set him down at this kit or any other kit, it's going to sound like Neil Peart. If you take John Bonham, rest his soul, the same thing. You know, a drummer has a certain style, certain playing characteristics, and only so much of that will come out of the instrument. It comes out of the person's head, out of their personality, their soul, and it comes out of their hands as well. And All you're doing is you're taking what is in your head and you're transferring it to your fingertips. And being a drummer, we have an issue because a guitar player or a vocalist has it right there. You're having direct contact with the instrument. You can move, you can change things, you can play with a different part of your finger. It'll all make a difference. Same with keyboards. There's a lot of different technique there, and the way you're hammering on it, the way the tension and the spring action is. Or with a drummer, we have to take that signal and push it all the way down the stick to the tip. And these are a short stick, but if you play a regular stick, there were some here earlier, they're usually about 1 inch to 2 inches longer. So then you're adding to it. So our slight disadvantage is that you've got to get that signal, that sound, all the way from your head, well, it's only about 3 or 4 feet, to the tip of that stick. And then you've got to get it through plastic, and it's got to resonate through wood. And no matter what you do, you're hampered by that as well, because a drum is never going to be anything but wood, plastic, and metal, unless it's made out of something else. But still, it's just like basic cake batter. It might be different material, but it's always going to be wood, plastic, and metal, or fiberglass, plastic, and metal. And that's just what it is. So you've got to make the best with it, know how to tune it, know how to make it work with the weather, which all this will only come with time. So you'll get that sound to the tip of that stick. And again, you have to practice and work at it and learn how it works. You can't just sit down and kind of play at something. Sure, if you've played long enough, you've learned there's a sweet spot on the snare. And if you play the snare directly in the middle, it's kind of damp, even though I'm barely rim shotting. And if you play it off to the side, say halfway, you're getting a little bit more tone or a different, acoustic characteristic out of it. And depending on, the pattern you're going to play or whatever, what you're going to get out of it. So that's what I can tell you about that.